Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the book log, where I log the books that I'm reading. Today I'm talking about a pretty divisive book, apparently, The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Pretty much every review or comment I've seen about this book has very strong feelings towards it, one way or another. Either it's this mind blowing, one of a kind mystery thriller, or it's annoying and stupid and bad. It turns out, though, that actually it's just fine. I didn't really love it. I didn't really have strong feelings about it, except for maybe a strong sense of mixed feelings, if that makes sense. There were parts of it that I thought were really well done. There are other parts that I thought were kind of stupid. It's just kind of a puzzling book to me in general, I would say. I mean, the story itself is a puzzle. It's a mystery. The characters are all really suspicious the whole time. Also, I'm just going to say this now. Spoilers. I'm going to spoil this book. I'm going to talk about the end. I always spoiled the books that I'm talking about, but I don't know. It feels particularly necessary to warn about that for this book. There's some information that is maybe intentionally concealed from the reader. And so if you haven't read it and you don't want to know about that, then maybe don't continue watching the video. There's multiple twists and turns, including a pretty significant twist ending, which I'm probably going to devote a lot of this review to discussing, because to me, this book really feels like it was built in service of the twist ending that it has. Like, it almost feels like the book was constructed backwards, starting from the idea of the twist. You might call this the definition of contrived, but I don't know. I think that Alex Michaelides was savvy enough to kind of keep things under wraps throughout most of the story. So anyway, in order to discuss this twist, I guess I'll kind of give a brief overview of the plot, which is pretty simple, all things considered. One day, a woman named Alicia Berenson shoots her husband Gabriel several times in the head and then just proceeds to remain silent indefinitely. It's confusing because she never tells anyone why she did this. There's seemingly no motive at all. By all accounts, they had a very healthy and happy relationship, but nonetheless, she's currently living out her days in a psychiatric unit. So that's sort of one half of the story. The other half is following around Theo Faber, who is a psychologist who works at the ward where Alicia is staying. Theo is very interested in this case. I would say bordering on obsessively interested in the case, to the point where her residency there is the main reason he even applied for the job in the first place. He's determined to figure out the mystery, to get Alicia to talk, to figure out what's going on. He has several one-on-one sessions with Alicia throughout the story, and he does seem to be making some degree of progress with her throughout the story. Theo goes around interviewing various people from Alicia's life, and their testimony kind of works to further muddy the waters of the case. People give contradictory accounts of Alicia's personality. They all seem to be like somehow personally implicated in the case, and I think the book just kind of does a great job of keeping you guessing and keeping you confused the whole time about what is actually going on. And then there's also a subplot to the Theo half of the story about Theo's wife, Kathy's infidelity. Basically, she's cheating on him, and Theo kind of figures it out during the story. At first, it seemed like a kind of weirdly separate storyline to me from the rest of the stuff, but it is actually pretty integral to the twist ending. And on top of that, a lot of the story is told through the perspective of Alicia's personal diary entries. And this also adds to a lot of the murkiness because, a lot of the things in Alicia's diary are directly contradicting things Theo is hearing and seeing. It's hard to gauge whether or not Alicia is a reliable narrator in her own diary. She keeps talking about how she's being watched, she's being followed, she's like nervous for her safety, and she seems pretty convincing, but it's also hard to tell if the whole thing is just some sort of paranoid delusion. No one really takes her seriously. It's kind of explained that she's had similar types of psychological issues in the past. So that's kind of the premise of the story. You have this murder mystery at the center. You have all these strange characters. You don't really know the true nature of the events that occurred. But then that's when you get to the twist ending. So again, like I said, the twist is kind of related to the whole infidelity subplot. So the way that it initially unfolds is you have Theo, who's stalking the man who his wife is cheating on him with. On multiple occasions, Theo follows this guy home and kind of spies on him through his own window. And one day he decides that he should probably inform this man's wife that she's also being cheated on. So what does he do? He puts on a ski mask, breaks into her house, ties her up, and bam. It turns out that, this woman is actually Alicia, that the man Kathy is cheating on him with is Gabriel, and that Theo was there in the house the night Gabriel was killed. So basically, when Gabriel gets home that night, Theo ties him up too and pretty much forces him to choose between his own life or Alicia's life. He does this dramatic countdown from 10 for him to decide, and when he gets to 0, Gabriel says that he wants to live, basically sacrificing Alicia's life for his own life. So Theo fires the gun in the air to convince Gabriel that he actually shot Alicia, even though he didn't, and then he leaves the house after that. And then so what it turns out actually happened, the entire revelation to this mystery is that Alicia is in such distress over Gabriel choosing his own life over her life that she does in fact shoot him multiple times in the head. All along, it was Alicia who shot Gabriel in the head, and now we sort of know the reason why. So yeah, that's the big twist. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty decent one. The main red herring is the chronology of the two storylines. You're led to believe the whole time that the Kathy infidelity storyline is happening simultaneously with Theo working in the psych ward. But it turns out the infidelity chapters are actually flashbacks. They precede all the other events, and they are, in fact, the reason that Theo broke into Alicia's house in the first place. Now, on one hand, I think the twist works well. It's constructed nicely. It makes coherent sense when you think about the events of the novel in retrospect, but I wouldn't say that it's perfect. For one, I do think it's a little bit predictable. I didn't have all the details down, but I had known for a while that Theo himself was somehow going to be involved in the ending in some way, and then when he began to follow this mystery guy home, the pieces kind of started falling into place for me a little bit. I think my main issue with the twist, like I kind of alluded to earlier, is that it does make a lot of the book feel contrived. It's very shocking and effective in the moment that it happens, but when you actually stop to think about it, there is no real reason for a lot of this stuff to be happening. So for instance, after all of the events that are revealed at the end of the story, I don't really get what purpose there was for Theo to still try to interact with Alicia at all. He never really had an obsession with Alicia, or at least that's not why he broke into her house in the first place. So I don't really get why he wanted so badly to get this job at the psych ward. Why is he even trying to get her to talk at all? Apart from him just being crazy, does he really have a motivation to have tied up and assaulted Alicia in the first place? Just feels like a lot of the events of the story were written specifically to frame the plot twist at the end without regard for whether or not it made sense story-wise. So again, just kind of contrived. And then I have one more sort of small nitpick with the ending. It's pretty minor, but the very end of the book, the very last chapter, there were several confusing elements to me. First, Theo tries to kill Alicia by injecting her with morphine so she won't talk, but this decision does not make any sense to me. Theo did not kill Gabriel. He never actually committed a murder. He broke and entered and he assaulted some people, but trying to murder Alicia is pretty pointless as a cover-up tactic because if Alicia does talk, she's confessing to an even greater crime herself. And he also, at the very end, tries to implicate this other psychiatrist in attempting to murder her with morphine by kind of pointing out the injection mark on her arm. But before that, the psych ward was perfectly willing to accept the idea that she accidentally overdosed. So I don't know. It just feels like he's trying to set himself up to get caught for no reason for a murder that he had no reason to commit in the first place. I just thought the whole series of events at the end was strange and hard to follow. And, I guess the explanation is just that Theo's crazy. He's just not a very stable guy. So it's not that hard to suspend your disbelief that he would do these irrational things. But it just, I don't know. I had trouble making sense of that part. I know a lot of that last section probably sounded pretty harsh, but all in all, I still think this is a pretty good story. It's definitely fast paced. It's very entertaining on a page to page basis. It kind of is a propulsive read. It keeps you wanting to know what's going to happen next. It keeps you guessing. I would say it packs a satisfying punch, even though it kind of fails to hold up to a lot of scrutiny after the fact. I like the parallels and the references to the Alcestis tragedy, which are kind of woven nicely throughout the story. thought the characters were fine for the most part as well. Like, they're pretty believable. Even some of the minor characters like Yuri and Diomedes from the Psych Ward, Jean Felix, Paul, and Max are also these recurring figures from Alicia's past. And I thought they were all complicated and perplexing in their own ways. It's very true to form of the psychological thriller genre. It keeps you thrilled and it messes with your mind. It's not the perfect story, but it does stick with you for a while, gives you something to think about. I appreciated it for that at least. Probably going to give it 6.